here we're talking about the shurut al-sujud. He said they are sab'ah. He said there are seven. Like I just mentioned, when we talk about the shurut al-sujud, we're talking about shurut al-sihha. And so we know that these are conditions, meaning, again, that they have to be there in order for that thing to exist. The thing that we're talking about is sihhat sujud, the acceptability of the sujud. Tayyib. And we're talking about the sujood and all of the salah, the whole of the salah. He said that they are sab'ah. Not the sujood, but the shurut. So you know that if any of these conditions are not met and it's not an excusable situation, then the sujood doesn't count. And we know that the sajdah or the sujood and the salah are from the arkan of the salah, which means if you don't have one of the rukn for the arkan of the salah, and again, it's not an excusable situation, then um, there is no salah. So this just goes to express the importance of making sure that the sujood that we do in the salah, we're not just making sujood, but the fact that we're making sujood correctly. But the fact that we are making sujood correctly. All right. So he says that the first of them, طيب, is أن يسجد على سبع أعضاء سبعة على سبعة أعضاء. All right. This is the whole of the situation. You know those seven places in which you are supposed to make the sujood. The seven places in which you're supposed to make the sujood. And you know, those are the ends or the underside part of the toes of your feet. Right? Your knees, your two knees. So you got two and two hands. So that's another two, that's six. And he talks about the whole of the situation of your forehead. And he also talks about the situation of the forehead and the nose because it should be lined up on the floor like that. Right? Which uh he's going to, there is something I do want to point out though. He says that these seven places, he says part of the forehead. He says part of the forehead. Right? He says each and as well as each of the ركبة, the knees, that's what they're called. Right? He says the two hands, and he says the feet, the underside of your toes of your feet, like you know how when you make your sujood. Right? The reason why we don't say, all right, there's a difference between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable from the part of your head that you put on the floor. And make sure you pay attention to this because it's really important. Because I did have someone when we went through, when we were explaining this before, um, it got back that something was misunderstood. So I'm going to make sure that it's understood. And this is the fact that you can't tell someone. Now, yes, we know from the sunnah is to make sure that your forehead and your nose is touching the ground. So there's a part of your forehead that should be touching the ground in order for your nose also to be touching the ground. You understand? Your forehead has to be on the ground. The nose doesn't. It's the most complete and the best way to do it to keep your nose and your forehead touching the ground at the same time. Why am I saying this? Because you have some people that they learn when they make the salah, they put a different part of their forehead on the ground or a different part of their head on the ground. So you're going to find that their prostration mark isn't here on their head, which it'd have to be here in order for their forehead and their nose to be touching. Some people, you'll see their prostration mark is up here. So you had a brother, may Allah preserve him. He started going around and telling people, listen, your salah isn't acceptable. And since you've been praying like that, your salawat all this time haven't been acceptable. Right? And not only hasn't it been acceptable, now you have to make them up because you owe them. And you know, I understand where why he understood this. But you need to understand that the fact that your forehead hits the ground is what is necessary. The part of your forehead that hits the ground isn't the part that's necessary. Now, that we teach, and it's always taught that the forehead, so that the forehead and the nose is touching the ground at the same time. So it's going to be a certain part. But if your nose doesn't touch the ground, because you'll see even when you look, some people when they go to make sajda, they don't put their nose on the ground at all. Their face doesn't go anywhere near except that part of their forehead to touch the ground. Right? So understand that that which is necessary is that your forehead is on the ground. The part of your forehead that touches the ground isn't the thing that's necessary. The fact that your nose is touching the ground isn't the thing that's necessary. If your nose doesn't touch the ground and you're making such that it doesn't negate the acceptability of the sajda itself. So yes, this is the thing that I wanted to mention about this particular condition, and this is that when you make sajda on those 7 places. Type you make sajda on those 7 places. The Sheikh he explains here. He says, وَيَسُنْ تَرْتِيب وَدَ الْأَعْضَاء الْمَذْكُورَةِ. He says that what's from the Sunnah in terms of طيب, putting these body parts or these body parts on the ground. He said the tartib, the order of them in which they hit the ground. He says بأن يدع أولا ركبتيه. He says that he puts down first his rukbatayn, his knees. طيب. Now, obviously, you know his feet are already on the ground, so that doesn't need to be mentioned. But he puts the first things that are going to hit the ground that aren't on the ground are his knees. He says, thumma yadayhi. He says, and then his hands. He says, thumma jibhatihi. He says, and then his forehead. Right? He says, this is the way that is from the sunnah to go down in the sujood. That when you're coming up from the standing position and you go down, your knees hit the ground, then your hands hit the ground, then your head hits the ground. As you go out further, more parts hit the ground. All right. Now, like I always explain to y'all, you have to understand that these books are very important, but you need to understand how to understand the books. And I'm sure by now you all know what I'm about to explain. And this is the fact that he says that this is a sunan act. So when you see individuals putting their hands down first and then their knees in there, we don't say, listen, no, you can't do that. Because he's explaining to you here now in the madhab, the sunnah is to do it this way. He didn't say it's obligatory to do it this way. He didn't say it's a condition for the acceptability of your sajda to do it this way. He said from the sunnah is to do it this way. So there's more reward in it. But even at that, when we say there's more reward in it, we understand that there's more reward in it if you have the ability to do this. Because you have some people that may be older, or you have some people that, they may have problems with their knees. I used to wrestle when I was in high school. So my knees aren't always the best. Or a person might say, I used to run track and we used to run outside and on the track and field. And, we used to run on the pavement in the street. And I messed up my knees and my ankles. So sometimes I might not be able to go down like that. People have a lot of excuses on why they can't do that. Their inability to do that doesn't remove their reward. Their inability to do these things does not remove their reward. We're talking about an individual, when we say they get more reward, we're talking about an individual that what? That has the ability to do these things. So that's the majority of what he mentioned about that particular condition. And the second one he says, وَأَن تَكُونَ جِبْهَتُهُ مَكْشُوفَةً. He says, and the other, or one of the other conditions, one of the other shurut, for the sihha of, or the acceptability of, the sajda is that the jibha, the forehead is makshufa, it's uncovered. It's not wrapped up in all of the rest of that stuff. Uh, and he mentions here, he says, جبهة ما بين طولا. Okay, now he's talking about the hair and all of the rest of that. But what's important to you is that we understand that معنى السجود أن يكون الجبهة مصلي مكشوفة بأن يباشر بعض بشرتها. He's explaining, and this is something I think that you all know, you probably remember from the first time we went over this. And this is the situation of when we say that it's makshufa, it's uncovered, meaning that your forehead is what hits the place that you're praying in. Right? Is not some piece of cloth or whatever it is. It's either your forehead or even the hair that's on there, or the hair that may come down depending on what your hair is like. Right? But this is the thing that touches the musalla. This is the thing that touches the thing that you're praying on, whether it be the rug or the ground or whatever it might be. Right? He says, وَأَمَّا بَقِيَّةَ الْأَعْضَاءِ. He says, oh, and that this is another thing when he was explaining about the forehead being uncovered. He said the same situation should be with the hands and the feet. Right? The parts of the hands that are touching the ground and the parts of the feet that are touching the ground. He said, but he says, ما عدا ما يجب ستره uh, and then he talks about the situation of the knees, and he says that this is something that is makruh. This is having that uh, the part that that this particular part of the knee. He said that this is having that uncovered is something that is makruh. He said it's something that's disliked. Right? Because you all know we discussed the issue in some detail about the knee, the covering of the belly button to the knees and what of the belly button and what of the knees and things along these sorts. We did all of that. So he's talking about that part of that particular part of the knee that is on the ground. He said that that part of it being uncovered is makruh. It's something that is in itself disliked. طيب. The third of these conditions. The third of these conditions that are tied to the sihha of a person's sujood, or the acceptability of a person's sujood or prostration. He says, والتحمل برأسه. طيب. Um, basically, basically, this is the fact that your head is not something that's just touching the ground. But when you make sajda, that pressure, that same pressure that's on your knees and your feet and your toes and your hands should be on your head. It's not like just simply, placing your head on the ground, but all of those parts should be carrying some of your body weight. It's not like you're doing a push up and all of the weight is on your arms or all the weight is on your legs like that. But the carrying of your body weight should be on all seven of these parts, these body parts. So the pressure of your body weight should be on all of the parts, including your head. This is what he means when he's talking about tahammul bi ra'sihi. He says, وعدم الهوية لغيره. All right. The next one, number 4. What he's talking about here, he's talking about the situation of not going down into the sajda, not when he's talking about hawiyya. He's talking about going down into sajda, going down from being up in the upper position or the standing position and going down into sajda. That you don't go down into sajda except for the reason of making sajda. طيب. How does this play out? Let's say, I don't know, you heard some loud noise and you jumped down onto the ground and he was like, okay, well, while I'm down here, I'm gonna make sajda. You understand? In that situation, you can't just be down there and make sajda. You have to have gone down to make sajda. You have to have gone down to make sajda. Even in the sitting position, between the two sajdas, between the sajdatain, you're in a sitting position. That's why I say you're in an upper position. You're not always going to be standing. But you have to actually go down and put these parts on the floor for the purpose of what? Of making sajda. Not for any other reason. Okay, well, look, now I'm down here. I'm looking for something up under the couch. And, while I'm down there, I might as well make sajda. You can't do that. You have to actually have gone down for the purposes of making the sajda. That's the gist of what he's talking about in number 4. All right. He says, other than that, the sajda itself doesn't count. And as we said before, if the sajda doesn't count because the conditions aren't met, then we're losing or missing out on one of the arkan of the salah, and we're missing out on one of the pillars of the salah itself. And due to this, the salah itself is not correct because we can't make the salah without a pillar, without the pillars. Unless it's an inexcusable situation, and we've already talked about a lot of that, inshallah. Some of it we'll still discuss. Because if you keep in mind that what we're discussing, what we've been discussing up until now, in these last few classes, is all about, we talked about the pillars of the salah, the arkan of the salah. We talked about the arkan of the salah. Now what he's doing, as I told you, he's going to go through each of the pillars. Now we're talking about the sajda. Because we know that the sajda is from the pillars of the salah. But with that, we need to understand so that our sajda can count, we have conditions. And this is what we're talking about. So keep in mind that all of this ties together. It's not just a bunch of different points that he's mentioning, but rather all of this ties together, and that he's explaining to you everything that was in the book on that page where we talked about the arkan of the salah. And that was on page 44 and 45. 44, 45, and 46 in your book. Right? And right now, it talks about the sajda where okay, now he's talking about the sujood. And you're going to see that's in number 9. All right? So my point here is, do not forget that he's met all of these things that he's mentioning, and all of these things that we're talking about actually go in accordance with that particular lesson that we talked about, the arkan. He's just giving you now all of the things. Remember, I said that's why I read through all of that in one class. I said, we're going to do all of these. I'm just going to name them so you know each of these is a rukn, and then we'll go through and discuss each of them. And that's what he's doing. I'm just mentioning so that you keep in mind that these aren't individual bits of information, but it's all tied to that particular lesson. Right?